Thank you, sir. We have staff is going to start the live stream momentarily, and then we can call the meeting to order once we are technically live and visible. Okay, we are ready to convene, Madam President.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be with us here today. We're certainly hoping and praying that you're all safe and healthy as you and your families and households are as well. I am officially calling the annual board meeting of the Foundation for Excellence to order. Again, welcome and thank you for your patience. We are a little bit behind schedule today, but that's okay because it was more important that our directors were able to tune in. Thank you again, Steve, for working so diligently as always to ensure that we're all able to connect and other staff who are behind the scenes assisting us. So we can jump right into the
Well, it looks like, is anybody else seeing that President Graham Williams is frozen? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
We'll give it just a sec.
There she is.
You're back.
So, Madam President, I'm sorry, your internet froze, so we missed that whole last sentence that you would have spoken.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Just hoping that you're all healthy and safe. Thank you for your flexibility. Calling the meeting to order. Do we get that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I was talking about the lengthy package, which is necessary. Again, this being our annual board meeting. There has already been by Director Carroll one update to our minutes. So what I would like is a motion to approve our minutes, and then any further updates I would like to take care of during the discussion phase.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion or any updates to our meeting minutes, agenda items, or other attachments?
And I just wanted to point out that the first sentence of the minutes, the date that says October 26, 2019 should be adjusted to February 10th, 2020. That was the edit I'm suggesting.
Thank you, Director Carroll. Any others? All right, seeing that there are none, let's call for a vote. All in favor of the approval of our February 10th, 2020 board members?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing that there are none, the motion carries. I know that, sidebar, I was struggling with our executive committee members seeing who was the one who was making the motion and who was seconding and trying to keep up with that. Steve, do you need for any of us to raise a hand or make a motion, or are you able to record?
So Attorney Robinson is the Secretary of Record for board meetings. I'm Secretary of Record for committee meetings. I believe if he needs clarification, but Clyde, would you prefer a raised hand? Or
That would
like
be
a
helpful.
number one?
That'd be helpful.
My mistake. Okay, thank you, Attorney Robinson. I know that I had the same struggle. So if and when you're wanting to speak, just so we can be sure we're abreast of who it is who's making the motion or who's wanting, because it's a difficult thing. But we're glad to be here together virtually at least. So we can dive right into our reports and communication. Director McFarland, Finance Committee report, please, if you would.
Sure, and I would turn that over to staff to go over the financial.
Absolutely, and we're having technical difficulties with sharing the agenda on screen right now. So the packet should be up and visible, but it is not. So please hold tight so that everyone can see what we are on the same page. There we go. Okay, so. Excellent. Can everyone see the screen with blue and white?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And when I click on this link, did the window open up a new window?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
No.
Yes.
Do you see 427, the call to order approval of minutes of the agenda?
Not yet.
No.
Open, looks
Okay.
like.
Steve, it has a little delay. So before you ask if we see it, why don't you give it a second and then ask if we see it?
Good idea. Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, so we should be reshared again.
There it is.
Oh, no.
I've got it.
I can see it, Steve.
Yep.
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay. Thank you. So I will bring up the agenda report, and I'll give everything kind of a 5-count beat before moving forward.
Yep.
Okay. So this is the item that came to the Finance Committee and was then recommended for inclusion in the annual board packet that we see today. It's a recommendation that we saw at last year's annual meeting, and it's an annual process. It's to approve the annual independent audit and to conclude the annual financial compliance process. So a few things here that we'll see highlighted from the bylaws are that every year we're required to do an independent audit, and we're even required on a every 3 to 5 year cycle from one of our policies to re-examine that independent auditor to make sure that we're in compliance and being served and serving our transparent duties to the public that we need to. This is the second year of using the same auditor. And so we'll have in this packet the income statement for the Foundation for Excellence. We'll have the balance sheet, including any funds that are included in that. Currently, there aren't any trust funds or endowments in that per se. The statement, source of applications of funds, that's not applicable at this time. And then the written notices from the city manager and mayor to the board president describing the type and amount of support. And then a reciprocal letter from the foundation back to the city manager talking about funds given. Also in there is the Form 990. There's a public disclosure form. It's a very long packet that we won't go through now line by line, but that's available for public examination by anyone and who has access to that publicly. And then below here, we just have a history of kind of the background of all these financial processes so that we've got a good trail of how we got to where we are today and where we're going forward. So we can jump, we'll stay on this document right now, and then we'll go to the actual audit, which is a separate document in just a moment. So I think what we can do now is we can start off with a recap of where we are with the endowment and the investment subcommittee, and then I'll hand it off to CFO Steve Vicenzi to talk about an endowment update, and then we'll go to the audit packet. So we see here at May 23, 2018, the board directed the Finance Committee to look into what would be involved with establishing the foundation endowment, to put all the pieces in place, including compliance, governance, transparency, investment subcommittee, populating that subcommittee, and really everything that's required to have an endowment that can last forever. And that work was conducted over the course of that year. And at the following annual meeting, which was this last year, 2019, the subcommittee was acknowledged, and the investment policy statement, which guides the investment subcommittee in their activities managing the endowment, gave them all of the policy and parameters that they needed. In the subsequent year, since 2019, we've then established the accounts and the investment manager relationships through the investment consultant, Marion Capital LLC, in order to actually invest the money. So there's now an address and an account that we needed to get that endowment up and running, which is now up and running. So we received a major gift this winter, and that has been located into the endowment. And at this point, I think I'll hand it off to CFO Steve Vicenzi to walk us through the specifics of that. Are you there, Steve?
Yep, I'm here. Okay, so just kind of walking through the rest of the specifics related to the endowment. We received the gift on March 3rd. It was valued at just over $86.5 million at the time of receipt. And then through the time that we received the funds, actually beginning in December, we were working to set up our custody account with State Street, which is a large bank investment management firm. That work had been taking place. Usually it only takes 2 to 3 months, so we were anticipating being ready in time for when the endowment gift came. There's a bit of a holdup, mostly on their end due to some legal questions that we had posed, thanks to Attorney Robinson. And then following through, obviously, coronavirus hitting right in the beginning of March has also kind of slowed some of the back and forth. But we were able to get those accounts up and running by the end of March with State Street. So that was the first step to getting this, be able to settle the gift. Typically, we would like to sell any gift immediately upon receipt. Unfortunately, with the way we were set up at the time, we would have had no way to then turn around and invest the funds. In retrospect, that may have been a good thing, but we're not in the game of trying to time the market. And so we held on to the gift as received until we were able to sell and reinvest. We were able to get the gift over to State Street by the end of March, or sorry, yes, by April 8th. My apologies for the exact date there. There was a little bit of back and forth with getting the gift transferred. It's a significant amount, of course, required some, various notarized signatures and those sorts of things to get things transferred to the proper accounts. From there, then, once we were set up with the investment managers, those are companies such as DFA, BlackRock's, Jennison, some large investment companies that you may have heard of. We have to have individual agreements with each one of those. Once those agreements were reached in place, we were able to liquidate the stock at an amount of 81 million. Just for frame of reference, during this time period, obviously very volatile in the stock market. So that is 94% of what we received. For comparison's sake, over a similar time period, other city investment funds had declined 10 to 15%. And so just, again, trying to go back to the idea that we don't try to time the market, we were trying to time when we were available to sell and reinvest. And so, we've been working through Chris Ruppel, who has been instrumental in this process of getting these agreements and accounts set up for us, and also working to create an investment strategy that the investment subcommittee could agree to. We cannot obviously mimic the city's investment strategy at this time due to just amount of funds. All these investment managers have minimums. Some of them are as high as 25 or $50 million. So obviously we were not able to mimic that, but we were able to come up with a strategy that is a 50-50 equities to bonds that will hopefully help ride out some of this market volatility while while the investments obviously hopefully grow and await future contributions to then allow us to divest further. The next meeting for the FFE investment subcommittee is May 27th. At that time, they'll be taking more motions to set up, future targets and investment strategies moving forward. So I'll kind of leave it there. If there's any questions on any of that information, obviously quite a lot in what's been the last 4 to 5 months.
Okay, and there's of course always time for under board comments, or if you have comments, maybe if somebody's having a mute difficulty, feel free to jump in anytime. I'll continue on to the third item. The title here is required distribution. It's kind of hidden at the page break. So the FFE bylaws, section 9.04, require that either 3.5% of the endowment's corpus or the amount required to cover the tax reduction, budget stabilization, and aspirational projects are given from the endowment to the city. Since the endowment is not fully funded, and we have the agreements for ongoing grant support from the Stryker Johnson Foundation through the end of 2022, staff has discussed this really at length over the course of the year. And what we see is that the spirit of this bylaw clause is fulfilled in that the FFE is doing its fiscal duty to the city. So at this time, since we have those dollars coming in, staff is having that satisfy those requirements in the bylaws. And then what we would do, beginning with the 2023 fiscal year, is pivot to the endowment itself and go operationally forward that way. And there can be another moment for questions here while or comments. I will switch screens to go back to the audit itself. This is loading as a PDF. I'll give it just a moment. You should see a Kalamazoo City logo with the word memorandum once it loads on your screens.
Yep.
Okay, so these are the individual items that were discussed earlier when I went through the requirements of the bylaws. So this letter is modeled off last year's, so it's the report to the board of directors from the city. And again, since the dollars aren't coming from the foundation's endowment, the letter it'll be different moving forward once it's coming out of the endowment, but this remains, we're fulfilling the bylaws. It's really just a check-in to make sure that the board and the city staff and the city commission have that connectivity about the expense and then the reporting of use. So this is the same template that we used last year, which just kind of describes the general dollars spent by the city in the spirit of the FFE and to fulfill the FFE's mission. And then scrolling down, this is that reciprocal letter from the treasurer to the mayor and the city manager. So we expect beginning in 2023, beginning with the 2023 report, which will happen in the spring of 2024, these will be much more elaborate documents that will, convey all the information of the endowment expenditure. Now, I will try not to make anybody car sick with scrolling on this, so please forgive me, but it's a long packet. And I'll just, if I'm scrolling, just assume I'm not where I need to go yet. So I'll try and stop and wait on each document as we go through. Manor Casterison audited the Foundation for Excellence again this year. It was a positive audit and there were no findings, no adverse findings. I'll scroll down here to signatures. So they were engaged, as you can see from the signatures, to start the process in February. And they themselves, as the auditor, have systems of quality control. So this is a testament to a fourth party that testifies to the independent nature of Manor Casterison himself. So this is other CPA. So we have those multiple layers of checks and balances. The letter of representation here, which you can see, I'll stop scrolling right here. So under financial statements, this is our statement of supporting the audit in every way necessary. So you can see items 1 through 5 on that sheet. This is about internal controls. This is about accounting. This is about making estimations. And then we don't have to read through all this, but this is all in the packet that was provided. And of course, this is public information. Just trying to show the due diligence and elaborateness of the process. So this was certified by Chief Financial Officer. And then coming down to the audit itself. So I'll pause here for a moment. So this is year ended December 31st, 2019. And then I'll move right to this is a statement of their methods, the responsibility of the auditors themselves, and we get to the financial statements. So this, as a recap, these dollars here, the $44,774, are represented by the donations made by, I would say primarily or overwhelmingly, if not entirely, people who have given from the city of Kalamazoo, either out of interest in supporting the foundation or as a consequence of wanting to convert their savings on their tax payment into a contribution to the foundation's endowment. So in the audit itself, there is an item at the very bottom of any audit that says subsequent event, and that contains large activities that would take place during the time of the audit itself or in the first quarter. So in this case, that documents the large gift to the endowment that CFO Vicenzi just recapped. And the purpose of that is that so come this time next year, and in our case, it's a great example, when all of a sudden a very large amount of money shows up in the endowment, it shows that it was anticipated and that there was that paper trail all the way back to the beginning. So next year, this audit will look very, very different. This is the last year where we just have the relatively small gifts represented over the past several years. I'll scroll down here as well.
Steve?
And that, yes, Mr. Director Anderson.
Did you roll by their opinion, which was just above the beginning of the financial statements there? One more page up, right there is opinion, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just want to make sure you highlighted that last section.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
That's the critical piece of the whole thing right there. Their opinion.
Excellent. And we can, so the 990, I won't scroll through this, it's a very long document, but just to point out that this is the public disclosure copy. This is available to any individual on GuideStar or per request. For nonprofits, that's the case anyway. That has nothing to do with the Freedom of Information Act, which we also are subject to. That's just the standard operations for nonprofits. So those every year are then released and available. And that, I'll take us to the bottom of this. I apologize again for the scrolling. And I'll get to the annual report, which might take a moment to load because it is a graphic kind of document. There we go. So let me know if that's showing up on people's screens.
Yeah.
That is a very nice picture, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this year we wanted to, in the statement from Madam President, highlight, you know, this is looking back at 2019, but it's a unique historical moment, obviously. And so the statement really beautifully highlights the fact that, you know, the foundation is here for the city, lowercase c and capital C city. And, you know, that's what we've been trying to do for the past few years. And that's what we're always going to do is we're here for the large challenges, the big structural challenges, to really make the change that everybody has been pulling for to do in our city, but also acute challenges. I mean, the pandemic is hopefully a historically unique event, but we can imagine other things that could happen to the city as well. And we just wanted to highlight that, you know, we've been here, we stay here, and we're going to be here really to benefit everyone in the city. And with that, we've paired it with a link again to the neighborhood map, which that's the tool that we released last year that shows where our investments are made by goal area, by neighborhood, and by project. We're working on an update for that now that we have a complete 2019, but it's still a fantastic, pretty much up-to-date tool for anybody to look into and kind of see how we've been operating in the city. And then this is what we heard from you as a board and what we've heard from the city again. And what we know is true from startup organizations that, such as essentially us still in year 3, is that you can't go wrong with hammering the basics. So we really want to make sure in this report that we're discussing what we do, why we do it, who we do it for, and how we do it. So here we recap the budget stabilization, the tax reduction, and the aspirational support. We show the top level numbers from 2019, as you can see, and we've got a quote that we shared at our last board meeting from a young lady at the expungement clinic, which is tied in as a new program from 2019. It's just a great way to kind of highlight a testimonial in the voice of somebody who was positively affected. Here you'll see the audit financials again that we just saw in the packet. And on the left column there, you'll see top level Imagine Kalamazoo strategic goal breakdowns of where those dollars are being invested. And then on the final page, two things. One is this amazing photograph that city staff took at the Certified Nursing Assistants graduation at the at Northside Community Development Association, which was a project in partnership with the Promise. And Director Washington, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you say 6 of the 9 graduates were hired right out of the certification process?
Yeah, they sure were. Bronson was a partner with it. They didn't hire all 6, but 6 people did get jobs of the 9. Okay. And while this project was a strong project to try to focus on Kalamazoo Promise students, we had 1 Promise student in there, but also 2 Promise parents. So it was a really successful program. Excited about it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And so we pair that with, again, you know, the who, what, where one. So we've just got, again, a repetition to make sure that we've got good coverage of what we are, who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. You'll notice we took the liberty of assuming a positive disposition of the board today with regard to Director Hess and Director Hoffman, and have included them in the 2020 Board of Directors. So no pressure at all. We like them a lot. So
that's right.
So that concludes the packet, and I'll get us back to the top level agenda so that we can see the recommendation, board approval of the annual independent audit, and conclude the annual financial compliance process. So with that, I hand it back to you, Madam President, for, I guess, comments and motion.
Okay, thank you. You know, that annual report is just wonderful. Those pictures are so inspiring, and I just wanted to publicly say how much I really enjoyed reading about all that we've done collectively together. So thank you, directors. Job well done, and thank you those in the city who've worked so hard to support and put together such a wonderful report. Any comments or questions about the financial committee report presentation? Seeing that there are none, I'm looking for a motion for its approval.
So moved, Ritzema.
Thank you, Director Ritzema.
Aboard.
Support and seconded by
Charlene.
Okay.
Charlene.
Thank you, Director Taylor. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Executive Committee report.
So I don't believe the Executive Committee has a report from last meeting. They did meet and set up the agenda for this meeting, and they made recommendations under the officer item. I would, if possible, like to take this opportunity to just highlight some of what the city, in partnership with the Foundation for Excellence, is doing in response to COVID. And actually, we've brought in a partner from my city, YOU, to discuss, which I'll stop there for a moment, that's one of the 3 youth programs that the city supports with Foundation for Excellence support each year. That's the Summer Employment and Employment Preparedness Program that's operated ultimately by KRESA. And they have they've basically had to trigger their most extreme contingency plan for my city YOU in response to social distancing that's going to continue and would affect their program. And we did a walkthrough with their leadership on their online tool and some of the plans they're making. And I was so impressed and I was so pleased with where that's going that I wanted them to share. So we'll have a brief presentation on that in just a moment. As everyone, I think, has seen from updates so far, we have 2 major programs that are responding to COVID. One existed already, and it traces its history back to the floods, the catastrophe of floods that we had several years ago, and that is the Disaster Relief Fund. The City Commission moved to allocate $310,000 to that fund at the United Way, which is pooled together with other funds at the moment about, I think in total, about $1.5 or $1.6 million of funds raised by the Kalamazoo Community Foundation and those also raised by United Way. And those dollars have been activated by a grant advisory committee comprised of United Way and Kalamazoo Community Foundation employees to really get immediate assistance to nonprofits and service providers in the city and the county as well, but our dollars are of course limited to the city, and that's been tracked. And the point there is, we need to help the helpers, and there are nonprofits that are not only taking themselves just large financial hits to being able to operate because they can't open their doors, they can't have fundraisers, they can't receive fees. In one case, and there's the attempt to keep those organizations alive. The other is mostly is to support organizations that have seen an increase in need because of COVID. So they're providing services such as food or other support services to families in our city and in the county, which need support because they've got lower revenue on one hand, and B, they've got dramatically increased need on the other. And we will put together a final report to share. It's currently on the United Way's website, which I am trying to not sound like I'm buying time on, but I'm trying to get that web page to load. So give me just a moment.
No worries, take your time.
It's the one day when the internet is slow, isn't it?
The internet knows when you're in a hurry.
Okay. So, and for this, I'd give a shout out to Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb for really being a part of setting this up in the first place. And then also just Alyssa Stewart and the Executive Director of United Way of Battle Creek and Kalamazoo Region, Chris Sargent, who put this together and really just do such a fantastic job managing it. So do you see, does disaster relief up on the screen now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, super. So you can see this is the landing page. This is where people can donate or access information. This is part of the overall Kalamazoo, KCRC Kalamazoo Disaster Relief Coalition. That's also a partnership with 211 at Griffin Place, and they have a resiliency officer who's helping to oversee all of this as a unified effort, which helps really keep it running smoothly and keeping different people from duplicating efforts in the community. And it's been operating very well so far. So you'll see here the disaster relief fund expenditures. You can see there it's food. It's a combination of staffing, food, and other supplies necessary to keep critical organizations running. You can see childcare, other basic needs. And this is just a real snapshot of our community and where the needs are. You can see here a list of organizations that have received the funds. Consistent with United Way, they'll release the list of organizations funded, and they show the aggregate total, but they don't release individual grant awards. So just FYI on that. So this is Disaster Relief Fund, and the need continues. We can't say that it's necessarily plateaued, but I think it'll come in surges as this continues to become essentially a protracted crisis. What was urgent response becomes maybe chronic need, becomes kind of structural need. So United Way and Kalamazoo Community Foundation have done a fabulous job in taking the lead with fundraising and making sure that these funds are resourced and really sustainable. So again, it's not just the generosity of our community, but it's the competence and the ability to really get the work done that is so impressive. And we're, as city staff, I could say I'm really proud to be in partnership with United Way and the Community Foundation on this. That's in a sense a prelude to the other initiative that we have been involved with and really took a leadership role on, which is the Kalamazoo Small Business Loan Fund. As you've seen in updates through your inbox over the past couple of weeks, the need for small business support was almost immediately clear when the pandemic really took full shape. And we heard from leadership of the city, what can we do? Who can do something? Who's doing anything? So we kind of looked left and we looked right, and we started looking for national best practice models for how people were responding to this. Fast forward about just a few days, we had really got the basic information that we needed about what a best practice model could be, what an appropriate amount of money could be to really have an impact and not leave a bunch of people kind of out in the cold. And United Way made it clear up front that they felt a duty to really help where they could at this time of crisis. And they saw as well that they had just a number of efficiencies already in their system from the fact that A, we work together already for the disaster relief fund, so we have the relationships. B, they had the software platform and the staff and the bandwidth to be able to put up an initiative like this from scratch very, very quickly. So myself and Chris Sargent worked together with his staff and city staff. Antonio Mitchell in economic development is a crucial part of this to, within, I think it was about 10 business days, get the entire structure of the fund planned out and launched. At a special meeting of the city commission, $2 million was made available for that fund. And just to walk through the top level idea of the fund is it's intended to be very low interest loans to small businesses under 50 full-time employees with revenue of less than $2.5 million a year in the city of Kalamazoo, and really to be a lifeline to bridge them to larger funds from the state or federal government. So I'll keep scrolling down, but the other key portion of this was an all online application process, given social distancing and the fact that just, people, the brick and mortar stuff isn't open. And to make it absolutely low barrier, and to not only do the outreach necessary to reach all businesses in our city, but also to avoid or eliminate the structural elements of traditional banking that can be disincentivizing or discouraging or excluding to minority and women-owned businesses. And those things can be having to have a certain amount of actual assets, having a zip code screen or a neighborhood screen on the business, which essentially profiles a business. We didn't do any of that, and we did furthermore outreach to make sure that we were getting out to basically a representative slice of small businesses all throughout the city of Kalamazoo. So what we saw was, and you can see here under application process, this list would typically be much, much longer. But so we've kept it, again, as low barrier as possible. Kalamazoo United Way put together an advisory board of diverse membership that has both traditional bankers, but also leaders from the small business development community, as well as some legal representation, to go through these applications twice a week and to make decisions as quickly as possible. United Way then followed up for due diligence identity check to just make sure that we're not having any fraud in the system, and then to electronically transfer funds essentially immediately as quickly as possible. It's all done online, including the signature. And I was invited to sit in on one of the calls, and can confirm that it was, it's quite emotional, as you can imagine, if you're a small business owner. It was emotional for us as well to just see that we were able to help so quickly, and that this really can just be the lifeline for some businesses to stay open and for some businesses to continue to pay staff and payroll while they determine what the outlook, of the economy is over the next 60 to 90 days. In the decision-making process, you can see here is equity, collaboration, short-term use, and flexibility were the guiding values of this process. Again, to just really get that work out there. I'm going to have to now bring up a PDF, so please bear with me for a moment while I do that. Okay, so I will be sharing again and give this just one moment to load up. Director Hopewell, you have raised your hand, sir.
Yeah, I was just wanted to ask how much of this information for both this fund and the previous fund is in Spanish? If I'm only Spanish speaking or Latinx, how would I be able to access this information?
So let me jump back on the website. You know, I can't answer that question off the top of my head. I apologize for that, but I don't know the answer to that. I can go back to United Way's website and have a look to see if that information is in Spanish.
Laura Lamb. I want just a quick update on that. I do know one of the grants that was provided through this fund was to work in partnership with El Concilio, as well as to create inroads into 211 to have a bilingual operator that is able to field all calls. And I believe El Concilio is diligently working to try to get information out to the community about accessing 211 and trying to get resources available. It doesn't entirely answer your question, but I wanted to provide that detail that I knew top of mind.
Yeah, so we're really good at getting information out, and the bilingual always seems to be the question that comes up often when we're putting information out. So, and the visibly challenged as well would be another issue. So anyway.
The question.
Returning to the document from United Way to look at overall small business lending so far. So total funds approved, you can see that. And then the breakdown of registered, which means that they created an account in the system, and then also submitted, approved, and pending review, denied and ineligible. As I understand it, all of the ineligible businesses are because they're not incorporated, they're not located in the city of Kalamazoo. And that's established, by the way, using the city's GIS system. So it's address-based, and it's the city confirms location within the city. And then you can see refused. Those are two, people are trying to juggle the available resources out there for the businesses so that you would tend to create accounts wherever you can, and then whatever comes due first. In this case, these were businesses that were able to access the payroll protection program, which I believe are federal dollars. So they then had created an account, but then retracted their submission. You can see here as well by industry, service, food and beverage, other, which includes arts and performing arts, dance and entertainment, legal compliance services, massage therapy, medical and laboratory, and then rental, hotel, real estate, and residential businesses, 11% manufacturing, and 14% retail. And we have demographic data. At the time of applying, there's a simple question of, is it a women or minority-owned business for that kind of top-level view. Once lending was completed, there was a more elaborate one-page survey, which was voluntary, given to borrowers to fill out. So you can see the breakdown here, which the research that we've done with the Minority Business Development Association through the U.S. Department of Commerce says that approximately 15% of businesses nationally are minority-owned businesses. The last available information we have for their Michigan state level report was about 8%. So you can see here that we feel confident that we're doing a pretty good job in the community. And if you prefer not to answer into account as well, there's quite a lot of sway there. Of course, we're always learning how to do better outreach, more outreach, be lower barrier and more access. But just as an initial blush of this program, we're pleased that we've also, you see for the identified gender of ownership, that we've really reached out in the community. On the left hand is a list of businesses funded so far. So I'll leave that up for a second and then scroll down to the bottom of it. And again, these are businesses they were given the option to not be listed. I think at this time, it's just maybe one or two that have chosen not to be listed, if any.
Steve, can you talk about an instance where a business would submit at the top there, it was a breakdown by numbers of I can't remember how it was listed further up. Right there. So it says to me, it speaks to me that number of businesses ineligible is 8. So that means that I'm assuming that the number of businesses denied were in fact eligible, but denied. Is that safe to say?
Correct.
And if so, under what circumstances would a business be eligible but denied?
So that denial would be based on really, I think, the financials. If a business, and I can follow up if a more detailed description from United Way's perspective was requested, I could definitely follow up in writing afterwards. But really, it comes down to the financials. So if a business and/or length of operations. So if a business just didn't have, say you're eligible, but you didn't have a 2019 tax filing, there's no way to verify any of that financial activity. If you just basically were operating at a very significant loss and were propped up by debt or other borrowing, you're just looking at a company that is, at the time of pre-crisis was not financially viable, and it becomes essentially unimaginable that it would be viable following 90-day or longer closure. And that's where it comes down to the Grant Advisory Committee's review of these materials as well. So not just lifetime, in some cases retired lending officers to make those decisions, but really a holistic view. And in some cases, there are follow-up conversations with the businesses to kind of get into the specifics of the books. But really, it would be there is making sure that it was just responsible lending in the first place.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Steve, can you explain how someone cannot be listed when they're receiving public dollars? How do they have an option to not have their organization listed? And maybe the attorney would know, but.
So I think, so a couple ways to look at that. One is that this is consistent with United Way's practice for granting, and these are at the point of departure United Way dollars. This was a grant made to the city to United Way, and United Way is in granting those dollars. So those would be two pieces to it. Typical lending, none of this information would ever be made public. So this is really trying to be true to that transparency promise of the Foundation for Excellence as well as United Way, but balancing that with just the actual needs of the business community when they lend. And I don't know if Attorney Robinson has anything to add to that.
No, I have nothing to add. I think you covered it adequately.
Oops. Okay. One third item that I'll add to this update for COVID related is that we've been in conversation, thanks to Director Washington, who's convened some voices around the issue of what's broadly considered the digital divide, and more specifically is internet access and technology access for our learners now that we're in a distance learning environment. It's no secret or surprise to anybody that a very significant part of our community doesn't have access to internet at home, and that they may also then not have a device. That's been a long-term challenge, and I really don't know that anybody has ever tried to face it head on. It's clearly a very expensive challenge, and one that once undertaken would just have to really address the sustainability issue of ongoing funding. But Director Washington convened some voices, including Kalamazoo Public Library, myself, and other city staff with KPS to look at what we can do to get a phased approach to addressing this issue. So right now we're still in the conversation phase, but it's important to us, and we think that there's an opportunity to definitely make some inroads into reducing that disparity of who has access to the internet and who doesn't. Because as this goes on into summer school learning, into catch-up learning, and then let's just keep our fingers crossed that there's not a big effect on next school year, but it seems like there certainly could be, making sure that we have that access out there for certainly our high schoolers, and then really as many people as possible to get access. We've talked to some partners or potential partners around the country that they work in the space. A couple major challenges are that, in brief, the shelves are empty because, of course, we're not the only city in the country that's trying to address this. So just, the actual number of routers or number of very low-cost Chromebook laptops, it's basically, you look left, you look right, and everybody's sold out. So there's that, but then there's also having an adequate plan in place so that this isn't just an unsustainable response to the needs right now, but can be built out as an ongoing initiative. And I don't know if Director Washington, if you have anything to add to that, but I appreciate you thinking of the Foundation for Excellence as an organization that, along with the city's IT department, can really contribute to this, and hopefully we can make some movement.
You stated it quite well. Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate the willingness once again when an idea comes up for the Foundation for Excellence to be a part of it. We also, as the weeks go, a greater collaborative starts to come into play. So we've included folks from KRISA and others that want to be a part of the solution. Just know that we are definitely looking at a solution that will encompass if this ever happens again. So we want not only something to help students now, but an emergency response that can be in relation to this again, and we can make sure that everyone has an equitable outcome and opportunity. And we've also found out there's just a sincere inequity, as we are all extremely passionate about solving these things. There's an inequity period each and every day, whether pandemic or not, for those in our community.
That's right.
Space for us to be in to make sure that they have the things that they need. So Steve, well done and well said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Washington. I know even these big kind of data information dumps are tough with a PowerPoint. We're all in the same room, so I'll just pause for a moment if there's any questions on these programs, and if not, then I'll move to Paige Farrell, who's the Administrator of Youth Services at my city YOU. So I'll give just some. Was somebody chiming in there? Okay. So I'd like to introduce Paige Farrell, Administrator of Youth Services with KRISA My City YOU program. Hello, Paige. Welcome. Thank you for spending some of your day with us. I've been told you are a panelist, so you're able to screen share, and I'm sure you are an absolute master at Zoom meetings at this point. So I'll hand it over to you for a brief overview of how my city is adapting to this distance learning environment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm really happy to be here with you guys today and kind of talk through some of the things that we've been working on to keep this program a meaningful experience despite what's going on right now in the world. So yes, I will be sharing my screen with you momentarily, but I first want to give just kind of the big picture overview and then show you a little bit of some of the examples of the things we're working on. But first of all, so through the My City Kalamazoo program, over the past several weeks, we have been working, as Steve said, on contingency plans. And we have made the decision that with everything that's going on for the safety as the most important, of course, we are moving forward with kind of that worst case scenario type of contingency. But in doing that, we have really been keeping our mindset on, all right, what is the purpose of this program? And the purpose being that we want to provide meaningful experiences related to career exploration. So helping young people in our city see what they can be and understand all of the options that are out there that they may not have even known about previously. And then in addition to that, helping them understand the skills that it takes to be successful in those things, and then the steps that it takes to get there and some of the things they can start doing right now at a young age. Now, typically, that would look like going out, being placed with a local employer or out in the community, working on community improvement projects. But in lieu of our ability to do that this summer in the way that we normally would, we have been working on a variety of options to provide basically a project-based virtual type of career exploration, employability skills experience. So the way that we're planning to implement that is very intentionally very similar to what the schools are doing right now for distance learning. So we are building out a variety of options of the types of activities that participants can engage in this summer, from Zoom style interactions with our career coaches, with our employer partners, to project-based learning that they can do starting from a paper packet and then interacting on the phone or by appointment in our office if we're able to get to that point. So some of those things will look like, first of all, rather than being placed in one industry at one employer for an internship, which is often the experience, combined with what we call career training, where they come to YOU and we engage in additional exploration, financial literacy, those types of components. The way we're choosing to structure this summer is going to be on a broader career exploration focused model. So where each week we'll have an industry focus. And in that way, we'll continue to be able to engage our employer partners, have participants engage in activities such as virtual talent tours. So we're working with our employer partners to build out some video talent tours that they can either sign on to live or have recorded and be able to access when they have a chance or when they can make an appointment to come into our offices. We're also looking at expanding on our online modules, which is something that I want to show you here in a moment. Let me actually just go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me here. All right, so once that shares, you should see a screen with several boxes, like different colored boxes. Okay, awesome. So one of the things that we've been working on for a couple years ago, we went to an online application and an online system. And so through that online system, every single MyCity participant for the past few years has a login to the online system. And that's how they've done their timesheets, their evaluations, and these things that we call online modules. So these have already existed in some capacity. And what we're planning to do over the next few weeks, we're already in conversations and planning with the developer of this online system to really build out the industry-focused portion. So let me just kind of give you an example of how this works. And again, this would be something where there would be a paper component. We want to make sure that we remain focused on accessibility, and we're currently surveying all of our applicants to get a better picture on where people stand. But for everything that we offer, there will be a paper option or the option, if allowable, to make an appointment, even an individualized appointment, to access these tools in our offices. So for example, what you see here are a variety of employability skills types of topics. And then I'll just click on preparing for the interview as an example. Within each module, there are a variety of types of activities, from things like videos to reading assignments to audio lessons. And then there's a variety of assignments. Now, the participants will be working in collaboration with our career coaches to kind of identify the specific things that are relevant each week. But this is the style in which those things would be completed, and then obviously be trackable so that they can still be motivated by completing a task and earning a stipend for the work that they're doing as they engage in these kind of skill building as related to how to be successful in the world of work. In addition to these types of kind of lessons and activities that are built in, there's also what we call the toolkit. And this is where right within their account, they can start to build out things that will be beneficial to them as they move forward in their career path. So everything from beginning to build a resume to practicing a job application, developing a cover letter, and a thank you letter after an interview. So those are things they would develop with our career coaches, but then they would have access to it, would live in their account. So they could download it, access it, update it whenever they want to. So these are the types of tools that have inspired us to think that given our current circumstances, we are in a position to provide a meaningful experience this summer. And as I mentioned, we're working with the developer. So this style of what you're seeing here of online modules will be added to with a variety. I believe we're looking at about 10 industries that will have online in-depth experiences available through this same system. And then we're also looking at what might be possible as far as, okay, if this summer is focused on an online project-based experience, what can we do to engage them as the school year starts back up in additional opportunities once it's possible, for example, to get people connected with internships and actual hands-on work experience. So we're excited, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of that with you today. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Paige, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Do you guys have a, this may be hard to answer, but do you have a timeline on when you kind of will be like drop dead? They're not going to be physical summer programs, or it's all going to be virtual?
Well, I should clarify. So as many of you may know, our summer program ranges in age from 14 up through 21. So there are a variety of kind of components to the program depending on where people are in their career pathway or in their education. So for example, I just want to be clear that some of the participants are engaged in training programs like CNA training, early childhood education, and we're still kind of in a wait and see mode. Many of those are still scheduled to go on, even with start dates in like early July and whatnot. So we're monitoring that, and we'll be making those decisions in partnership with the training providers. As far as the folks that would be placed in internships this summer, we have made the decision to move towards the virtual model for this year, because as we've been having conversations with our employer partners, it's just very difficult for them at this point to commit. Understandably, they don't know what things are going to look like, and asking them to bring on young folks into their place of work, no one can say what's going to be possible. And so in terms of logistics, it's kind of now's the time to move forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Paige.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Paige, so much for your time. Really appreciate all that you and your crew are doing, and we look forward to just seeing how this summer goes, and I'm sure we'll learn some lessons, and this fall we can bring an update back to the board to see what next school year looks like. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Please do come back when you know more about the fall. I'd be really interested in hearing more.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay. I will share my screen once again and get us. So we should be back to the blue and white agenda screen. And we are on out of reports and communications and into the regular agenda. So, Madam President, should I continue on to item D1?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. The agenda report is director appointments and reappointments. And just a recap again, per the FFE bylaws, all directors are reappointed or appointed at the annual meeting, and all officers are reelected and all committees are repopulated. So we have that churn every year of keeping opportunity open to board members, and by extension, of course, to the community as members come in from the community onto the board, and keep kind of that opportunity for participation open. So what we have this year is a recommended slate of candidates that were all approved by City Commission. We have the appointment of Jean Hess as City Commission Director for a term not exceeding her current term of office as Commissioner. Appointment of Stephanie Hoffman as the Housing Sector Representative for initial 2-year term ending in 2022. Reappointment of Charlene Taylor as Affinity Director for 3-year term ending in 2023. Reappointment of Alyssa Carroll as Arts Director for a 3-year term ending in 2023. Reappointment of Adam McFarland as Business Director for a 3-year term ending also in 2023. And a reappointment of Alice Taylor as the Neighborhood Director for the Northside Neighborhood for a 3-year term ending in 2023. And I'll just momentarily pause. The 2-year term for Stephanie Hoffman is because of the requirement that 1/3 of board members turn over every year. So if you remember when many of you started, some of you had a 1-year term, some of you had a 2-year term, some of you had a 3-year term. So it's just to keep that stagger alive. That's the only basis for it. And so then the subsequent term for Director Hoffman would be a 3-year term moving forward. So that's the recommendation. I would like to do a brief recap and presentation on the way that we arrive at our stakeholder director nomination. So since the beginning, we've worked with the Kalamazoo Community Foundation as the governance facilitator. They operate in a very, very crucial role as kind of a check and balance in our system of operation to make sure that the Foundation for Excellence stakeholder directors are brought from the community, are vetted by the community, are representative of the community, and that process just has integrity moving forward. So they produce this methodology packet each year when they make their recommendations, and I'll again scroll through respectful of everybody's eyeballs. So they have the top level goal of diversity of abilities to conduct the duties, diversity across sectors, and diverse perspectives. This begins with a call for applications in December of the previous year. The application is made available at the Kalamazoo Public Library branches, at City Hall, at the Community Foundation, and is emailed to a list of approximately 110 organizations and individuals. And we also try to leverage our city networks through City Commission and other groups to make sure that it's known that we're seeking directors. The application itself is very, very brief and right to the point. It's just 2 pages. So we try to keep that, again, low barrier. And it can be completed by hand as well as online. I'll skip this page. That's just kind of the background on the vacancy. So once applications are gathered, the sector group for that stakeholder, in this case housing, are sent the applications for review, and then there's a stakeholder call convened during which those sector representatives discuss the applicants and come up with a final list of what, their top candidates. It may be 3, it may be 4. The Community Foundation then takes that information and they look at the overall composition of the board, and they would track items like the requirement that I believe it's 9 directors live in the city, and as well as to make sure that it's a diverse and balanced board, so that we have different demographic sectors or attributes represented on the board that are representative of the community. So you'll see that there's a process chart here. Again, this is all on the Foundation for Excellence website. This is all public information. And we encourage people to know it and to track it and to be a part of it. This here is a statement of kind of attributes for board of directors. It's actually part of our policies, and it's really what a board member agrees to do to be engaged, to be informed, to be active on the board of directors. And then the application, again, that was mentioned earlier, shows sectors. I won't dwell on this too long. Demographic and socioeconomic information. And then scrolling down. These are instructions to stakeholder groups. I'm trying to get down to, so here's the chart of directors, which is anonymous, but again, it's a way of balancing diversity across attributes. So Community Foundation does a fantastic job looking at this each cycle. And then there's a final statement of, here's the application originally from Director Hoffman. I'm looking for, so here we are to the ultimate recommendation that came from the Community Foundation stakeholder group. So Ms. Hoffman received the highest ranking from sector leaders. And it goes on to gushing and flowing about Stephanie Hoffman's role in the community. And we did, I'll just editorialize for a moment. We had a touch base call this past weekend to just prepare for this meeting. And I made it very clear that we would be delighted to have her as a director, and just the experience and the involvement in housing and the perspective is something that, this board will cherish. And I also really made a point of saying how grateful I am of the board's healthy culture and ability to have honest conversations and tough conversations in the most positive possible way. And I think it's just a terrific fit in all those ways. Gene Hess I'll pivot to the City Commission Director. Gene Hess was nominated by City Commission to be the new City Director to essentially fill the slot where we had that shuffle from Mayor Hopewell shifting to Mayor Anderson. And we don't have a packet similar from the Commission, but I know, again, in speaking to Commissioner Hess, that, her passion is obviously education, community involvement, and youth. And so I think, every year our board just gets stronger and stronger. And I'm very pleased to be able to say that and very, very proud to work with all of you. So at this point, if people have any questions on the process or background or next steps, please feel free. And otherwise then, Madam President, we have the need for that. I'll go back to the agenda here for action on the recommendation.
Any comments or questions? Seeing that there are none, I'm looking for a motion to state the motion for me, Steve, please.
That's a good question. Would it be
approve the recommended slate of newly appointed
and reappointed directors? I believe, yeah. Attorney Robinson, do we need to read out the list of names?
Yes.
All right. So I'm looking for a motion to recommend that the board approves the following appointments and reappointments of directors. Appointment of Gene Hess as City Commission Director. Do I need to, Attorney Robinson, read the entirety or just the names?
No, just the name.
Okay, thank you. Appointment of Stephanie Hoffman as the Housing Sector Representative. Reappointment of Charlene Taylor as Affinity Director. Reappointment of Elisa Carroll as the Arts Director. Reappointment of Adam McFarland as Business Director. And reappointment of Alice Taylor as Neighborhood Director of the North Side Neighborhood. Looking for a motion, please.
So moved, Lundberg.
Thank you, Director Lundberg.
I'll second that if you need it.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Director. I can only see three faces, so I'm not sure who seconded the motion.
Madam Chair, can we stop the screen share so we can see everybody?
Yes, please, Steve. That's Steve. Thank you. Seconded by?
It was made by me, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Director Calderon. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing that there are none, the vote motion carries. Welcome you all. Welcome back, all of you who are reappointed. I'm so excited to work with you, Directors Hoffman and Hess.
Thank you.
We're a good group. You're going to love it.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Thank you, as are we. I was delighted to speak with Steve about your coming on board. And again, he did take the liberties to already place you on the newsletter. We hope that was okay with you. But again, we were so excited to have you join us. That's how we roll sometimes with the FFP. All right. Steve,
Okay.
continue, please.
Yes, Madam President, we are on to regular agenda item D2, that would be, and let me jump back onto
the approval renewal of the agreement.
correct. So I'm back on screen share now. And you can see the recommendation there. This is a repeat of the Marion Capital LLC agreement for endowment investment consulting. It's an identical agreement to last year's one-year agreement. It's recommended this time that it be engaged for 3 years. and that we pivot the funding of that agreement as originally intended from the allocation to the endowment itself. So that is to say, this year, the foundation won't grant money to the city to then execute the agreement. The money will be paid directly from the endowment, which now that the endowment exists, we're able to do that. So otherwise, the agreement is the same. And I don't know if CFO Vicenzi wants to contribute to this, but we are pleased with the performance of the agreement in establishing the very complex and complicated mechanisms and means for having the endowment. So it's recommended that we continue that relationship.
I'll step in and as reiterating kind of what I stated earlier. His expertise through setting up the endowments and agreements with the managers and all of the work that goes into that has truly been invaluable to getting us to where we are and where we need to be.
Are there any questions? Okay. Do we need to, yes, seeing that there are none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the renewal of agreement with Marion Capital LLC as endowment investment consultant for the FFE endowment for a term of 3 years.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, directors. Did you get that, Attorney Robinson?
I got it from Director McFarland. I was making the motion.
Okay, and
So
second,
moved.
so moved by
It's Vaughn.
Ron Washington.
Yes.
Director Washington. All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing that there are none, the motion carries. Thank you. Annual election of officers, Steve Brown.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Madam President. At the executive committee meeting, it was recommended that a status quo slate of officers be approved by the board. That would be for President Graham Williams, for Vice President Ritzema, for Treasurer McFarland, and for Secretary Miller. That motion was made and then seconded for presentation today. So at this point, then it would be open for discussion or then just an approval of the slate, an election of the slate, I suppose would be said.
Could we have the full screen of everyone, Steve?
Oh, yep, one moment.
Thank you.
There we go.
And the reason behind the slate, as we were discussing it as an executive committee, is that I moved to the president's role to fulfill the remainder of former Mayor Hopewell's role as president of the FFE, and Director Ritzema moved in to be the vice president, which was fulfilling my former role. But please feel like if you are interested, certainly we are interested in having a conversation and dialogue and voting. I just want to make that very, very clear that we are open to new members on our executive committee. We're open to new officers. I don't want anyone to feel alienated or have any type of reluctance if they're looking to be any of these offices, certainly. And we were all united in that. Any conversation, any dialogue, any questions?
I think you're doing a great job in president roles.
Thank you, directors. Thank you. It's been my pleasure to serve it. And I had some huge shoes to fill, Mayor Hopewell, but it's certainly been my pleasure to serve.
You're great. You're creating your own shoes. You got this.
Thank you for your mentorship, former Mayor Hopewell. Okay, so are we ready to make a motion, Steve?
Yes, Madam President. Oh. Thank you.
So the motion is that
Director Anderson got that one.
All right, that we accept the slate as presented. Motion is made by Director Anderson. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Aboard.
Supported by supported by Director Taylor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you all. Looking forward to serving again.
Yeah.
annual committee appointments. I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was just going to apologize. I'm taking the screen over again. So I'll look at this and then I'll bounce it back to the full screen because it obviously is easier for everybody to see everybody else. So it's recommended that the board discuss and consent to the president's appointments. Per the bylaws, you can see is it's worded that the president, with the consent of the board, shall designate the persons to serve on each committee, fill vacancies, etc. So as with last year, you'll see the form here that was circulated as part of the board preparation email. The executive committee and finance committee, you'll see that the eligibility is listed. So for example, the executive committee, since we've just elected president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary, 1 through 4 are filled. 5, you can see the eligibility there. They have to be a city director. And then 6 is a representative from the finance committee other than the treasurer. So we, in a sense, should kind of start with the finance committee. I did hear from Director Carroll, I think was the only director I heard from, hoping to stay on the finance committee.
Thank you,
So,
Carroll.
and I know that, Madam President, you and I discussed, in the absence of conversation at this meeting, that we could propose a status quo slate for everyone to continue in their current roles, since we haven't lost any members who are on those committees. And I know that Director Hoffman, we spoke over the weekend, and you mentioned that you'd hold off at least on this cycle in interest to join the committee before you kind of got your lay of the land for the FFE. So I guess it's time for discussion if there's any comments from the board. Otherwise, I believe you can make the motion on a status quo. You yourself as president, well, let's see the wording here. Somebody can make a motion to support your status quo appointments, and then that could be seconded. So I will end the screen share here.
And certainly any of you who are interested in committee leadership or appointments, we are open to having you. Again, just as we are talking about a slate, it doesn't mean that you aren't welcome. So please peruse the list of eligibility. We'd love to have you. We don't always disagree in our committee meetings, nor do we in these greater board meetings, but we always respect each other, and it's always a safe space. And I really enjoy the different perspectives. So I just want to say that to encourage anyone to think it over. If not, I'd love to continue working with those who are already on the committees.
So is there, I'm sorry.
I was just inquiring, is there still a vacancy to be filled on the finance committee?
That was my same question, sir.
Let me pull up the screen share one more time. So we would see President Graham Williams, Treasurer McFarland, Steve Ascenzi, City Manager Ritzema, and then we would have Alyssa Carroll, and the second would be is currently Vaughn Washington. So that would be, so there wouldn't be a vacancy, no. We'd have everybody we needed.
Unless someone wanted the appointment. I mean, we can just certainly discuss that. We're very flexible.
Question 2, on the executive committee, the 6th slot representative from finance committee, who, I don't know if I was serving in that position before.
It was.
I thought that was Director Dennison, if I'm not mistaken.
Dennison, okay.
He's not on the finance committee, is he?
No, Dennison is there as the 5th. You'll see the 5th slot here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was you, Jim.
So I think there's an opening on the executive committee from the finance committee.
Yes, yes. And so as Steve has stated, we were looking to solidify the finance committee so that we would know who's eligible for that 6th spot.
So that would be either Director Washington, Director Carroll, CFO Vicenzi, or that would be it.
Provided the finance committee remains the same.
Yes.
Well, I don't see anyone who's looking to switch over. So before I say that, the current finance committee, Steve, just for our own edification, is who?
That is Director Vaughn Washington, Director Alyssa Carroll, President yourself, Treasurer McFarland, Steve Ascenzi, CFO, and Vice President Ritzema.
Okay.
And so it's a representative of the Finance Committee other than the Treasurer, and 2 of you are already on the Executive Committee. So really it would be Director Washington or Director Carroll. What we've done this year as well is we've moved to synchronize the Finance and Executive Committee. So if it is helpful at all, it's really this. It doesn't really change the time commitment really much more than by say an hour on those quarterly meetings on Mondays.
And if Director Washington would want that, I'm happy to have him do that. And if he doesn't want that, I'm happy to step up. So what are your thoughts, Director Washington?
I believe that you are well suited to serve this. And would feel extremely comfortable with you carrying us into the next few years. Thank you for your volunteerism.
I'm not sure that's what she did, but we'll take it. I love it. Okay, so are we making a motion, Attorney Robinson, for both committees at the same time, or do you need me to break those up into 2?
I think you can handle it either way.
All right, so I'm requesting a motion to approve the annual committee reappointments as they are, with the exception of Director Carroll being represented on the executive committee of the Foundation for Excellence.
So moved.
Thank you. Director Calderon, pronounce your last name for me again.
Calderon, Wasto.
Wasto. Thank you, Director.
Support, Barb Miller.
Supported by Director Miller. Thank you, directors. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, team.
Excellent. Well, I have information for item E1 that we, from our support staff, that there have been no call-in comments. So for public comments, that has been addressed. And one item to add is that we, at our, before we go to item F for board member comments, is that the items we discussed at the February development work session of board ambassadorship and kind of staff communication support, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, we'll hold off on those until this fall, or there would always be the option of calling a special meeting. But we expect that the autumn meetings would have time for that, as opposed to trying to do that very serious work over a Zoom call. That's probably much better handled in person, as I think we can all agree. So just that's still top level of our list. And we'll just, in a sense, we could just say that gives us more time to elaborate that work and make it even better when we launch it. But just to touch base back on that. So otherwise, I believe we are at item F, board member comments.
I have a quick comment. Steve, can you hear me?
I can, sir.
Okay, internet's been funny. I would really hate to be in a city that faced this crisis without a foundation for excellence. I just want to say that. And that the work by the city staff in the availability and response time to questions and emergencies has been just remarkable. I continue to feel strongly that we can make calls to you and that things can be looked at in the most serious and with an equitable lens. And I can't thank you enough for that. But this foundation of excellence is special, and it is an addition to this community that many won't know anything about. Thank you for your work.
Thank you,
Thank
Director
you.
Washington.
Thank you, Vaughn.
Absolutely. I want to again just welcome our new directors, Hess and Hoffman, let you know how excited we are to work with you, all that you'll bring to this team. I think you'll find it a really inspiring place. We work really hard. I've served on many boards in the past and I'm on a couple now, but this one is truly serious about the work that we do in the city. And I'm just overwhelmed and delighted. I don't know if either of you two have anything to say. Certainly don't feel like I'm putting you on the spot. But again, a heartfelt welcome. You have the same rights and privileges as we all do, so never hesitate to speak out and contact us if you ever need anything. And thank you so much.
Hi, I would like to, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would like to thank you for the warm welcome both from the city perspective and from the personal perspective. I've always been a team player, and there's no team I'd rather be on than this one. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Anderson.
Couple of things. First of all, it's a total pleasure to see everybody's beautiful faces here on Zoom.
That's right.
My 91-year-old mother, who is basically what she describes it as house arrest over at Wyndham and doesn't get to see anybody. We just worked it out with her so she can be part of Zoom family meetings. And for the first 10 minutes of our meeting, she is doing nothing but giggling the entire time because she gets to see everybody. And just the total delight that is coming from her is kind of what I bring to my Zoom meetings now, just getting to see everybody.
Right.
I don't know, we are each so important to each other.
Yeah.
And so that means a lot. And just following up on that, it is a great comfort to me to be able to be in a meeting with a bunch of smart people who are thinking about important things and asking questions. So I don't have to every day think, what am I missing? What should I be thinking about? Because there's folks bringing that forward together. And that means a whole heck of a lot. And then I'll probably be saying this over and over again. I really appreciate what Director Von Washington Jr. had to say, but I really want to once again recognize our emeritus member and Mayor Bobby Hopewell, who did this hard work to give us this wonderful opportunity to do everything that we were describing. His picture's gone. I don't know what that means. And it is, and he and I had a little offline conversation about that, but I'm sure it is strange for him to be here and be a non-voting member when he's been for, a couple decades voting on all sorts of things. So I really, really want to recognize that. And our manager, city manager, Jim Ritzma, the two of them were really the connecting links that gave us the platform to do this work. So thank you to you two. It's a pleasure to get to be part of it.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I'm very excited and honored to be here. I feel as if I'm amongst family and friends already. Many of us are in meetings, it seems, every day together. And so I count this as a privilege. And I believe in the work that has already been done. And I am optimistic and hopeful for what we are going to do even greater. So however you can use me, use me. And I'm willing to learn. I'm excited because lives are really going to change. Like life is going to be better after we come through this, right? And so I'm just super excited and just in awe of what our Creator is doing in Kalamazoo. So it's wonderful.
Thank you, Director Hoffman. Anyone else? What a feel-good meeting. Thank you, everybody. In this time of uncertainty, it's so great. It really is, just as Mayor said, to be able to connect with like-minded people who have a spirit to do this work and support each other. And I think we need it. You all know that I'm a psychologist. I see the world through that filter, but we really need these positive interactions and to be in each other's presence, even if it's virtually. So I'm thrilled to have it, and I'm grateful for it.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful too. It's good to see everybody.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Director Taylor, indeed. Seeing that there are no further board comments, I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Mayor Anderson.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Director Hess. Thank you, everyone. Steve and Laura, we appreciate you. All of the city workers. Everyone have a wonderful, blessed, and safe day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Be well.
Shoot.